Welcome to the $1 Million Career, where we show people how to plan, build, and supercharge your $1 Million career. I have with me today a special guest, Gilda VanderHeyden. Gilda is a very successful life coach and founder of the nonprofit Path. Very excited to have Gilda on the show. We've known each other for many years, and I'm very interested to talk about life coaching. It's the latest rage, and who I've had several opportunities to interview some other people, but I wanted to have you on the show first. So first of all, how are you today, Gilda?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, Rob.
Oh, great. So let's get started. So what is the nonprofit Path?
So the nonprofit Path is a personal development life coaching practice that's designed to help professionals have less overwhelm and more balance in their lives so they can have a greater impact on their mission, on their communities, and those they serve. I work with all professionals, but have a special passion for nonprofit leaders and professionals, hence the name.
So, great. So is this life coaching or is it more executive career coaching? Because I keep hearing about both of these and they sound, each very uniquely great careers, right? So I'm kind of curious, is yours more executive career coaching or life coaching?
Mine is more life coaching. And so for those of you unfamiliar with what life coaching is in general, kind of like to sum it up as I help people solve their own problems, whether it's work, relationships, getting rid of a habit or establishing a new habit, so they can get to the next level and really experience living their dream life, essentially. And one, I guess, good analogy to life coaching is a lot of people go through life with one foot on the brake pedal and one foot on the gas. And a lot of times they don't even know what direction they're even going in. They're just going. And so life coaching gives them the clarity around where they're going, what their vision is, and helps them figure out what's keeping them stuck. So take off your foot off the brake and then really accelerate to get them to get to their goals much, much faster. So that's essentially what life coaching is about. In terms of the life coaching and executive coaching, they really use very similar tools and techniques, and they're both designed to help the client improve their lives overall. So they have the same kind of goal, same kind of tools. The main difference is on the executive coaching side, it's more geared toward performance at work, behavioral issues, other measuring certain outcomes, all related back to, work performance. It does touch on some personal stuff, whereas the life coaching is, even though it can encompass work, I would say it's a little bit more holistic because you're talking both personal and professional types of things. And it helps in, your health, your finances, your relationships, work, and, at home, all areas of life. So that's kind of the main difference.
Yeah, because it seems like executive coaching, you would be dealing with three people. You're dealing with the coach, the executive coach, the participant who you're coaching, the director of sales or whatever, and the sponsor who is going to actually pay you, like HR maybe, or the board of directors. Whereas it seemed to me that life coaching is more of a direct one-to-one relationship.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and it seems like coaching versus consulting. How would you differentiate those two? I mean, I know people have said that coaching is you're more or less facilitating someone coming up with their own solutions, where consulting is you're just giving that person the benefit of your experience and your information. So I'm kind of curious how you would define that in terms of being a coach versus a consultant.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there, Rob, in that the consulting is more drawing from your own experience and really giving the client advice, and
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
great and has its own place. The coaching is really interesting, and I think really pretty powerful, because when someone is actually coming up with their own ideas, they're much
Yes.
more likely to implement them and move forward with them. And it's an interesting process, because I would call it more of a collaborative process between the coach and the client, where
Yeah.
the coach is really bringing out different questions, different perspectives that the client can't really see in their own world. So another
Right.
analogy to use is coaching is also like having that prescription bottle, where your life is the prescription bottle and you're on the inside looking out, you see the label, but no
Yeah.
matter how hard you try, no matter what you're doing, you can't really ever see the outside of the label and what that says. Your coach
Yeah.
has that perspective and is able to give you that insight or help you get you there. So I think that's a big difference. And some people do a combo of consulting and coaching, which can be nice, but I find it's a harder line to draw. And I just really love the whole coaching experience.
And plus, I would see how if you were a career coach, I mean, an executive career coach, if the client hires you and you take that director of sales or CEO, whoever you're coaching, on a journey of self-discovery, and at the end of the journey, they decide, I don't want to work here anymore. You know, it
Right.
seems like the client's not going to be too happy. They just paid you, and now
Right.
they're superstars leaving the company. Whereas like life coaching, you don't have a third person who's paying you. You know what I'm saying? It seems like life coaching is a lot simpler, because you're just talking to that one person. You're just coaching him.
Right. Right.
Is
Although
that right?
some of the nonprofit leaders that I've spoken with, they do actually have life coaches that they work with. So for example, one in particular I know has
Yeah.
a therapist and a life coach come once a week for office hours for the staff. So you can actually work with organizations as well. It's just, I would say the expectations are, like you pointed out, Rob, where you know, it's more for the holistic individual, but the executive coaching is kind of like, hey, they want to see some results, some related to their career, related to the role,
Right.
related to the performance. So
Yeah, so I just wanted to draw that distinction for the benefit of our viewers, because I'm assuming that a lot of our viewers have never really heard that much about coaching. They probably heard coaching, but I guess I wanted to point out, with your help, that there's essentially two types of coaching. There is life coaching, which focuses on individuals, and there's also executive career coaching, which is more of a corporate type of coaching. Some similarities perhaps in the way, in the process of coaching versus consulting, but two different audiences, I guess, right?
Yeah. And another common misconception I'll get, or people will ask me, is, well, how is coaching different from therapy? And there's a big distinction there as well. And I'd say the best way to kind of distinguish the two is therapy focuses on getting somebody's past issues resolved so that they can function normally, healthily now, versus coaching kind of takes you from the present moment into what's your next best version of yourself, what's your next best future looking like, and how are you going to get there? So that's kind of the main difference.
Interesting. Yeah. I never thought about that before, but and then, since you're on the $1 million career, right? So we have special guests such as yourself to come on to, inspire and inform people, maybe do a little entertaining, to try and reach people out there that are maybe sitting at home or in the office listening to this, thinking, hey, I wonder if I should try coaching, and then the next logical question is, can I make a lot of money at something like this? And the first person that comes to mind is like Tony Robbins, he makes multi-millions of dollars, hundreds of millions probably, but how would you, how would you answer that question if somebody said, hey, this coaching sounds like I'd be really good at it, but can you make any money out of it?
Yeah, you definitely can. I pulled some stats. Some come from kind of more traditional outfits. Like one is from the ICF, which is the International Coaching
Yep.
Federation. They're sort of the
Mhm.
gold standard. Now their average is a little bit low. So their average, they said, is about 62,500 on average as far as salary goes, which doesn't sound that exciting to me.
Yeah.
I've got others that say, this was from Sherpa, a Sherpa study. They said around between 55K to 116K. But again, what I've actually seen and, experienced is more in the range of anywhere from, 100K on up to, million, even over that mark, but a lot are in the mid six figures on up. And so, it may not be pure individual one-on-one coaching. It might be a combination where they're putting together online courses, they're doing group
Mhm.
coaching, but it's possible. So I would say those stats are interesting. So if you Google, you'll find them, but I would say it's really a very lucrative career path and something that's exciting.
Yeah, I think the exciting thing about coaching, and I've done some executive coaching, and I find it very fascinating. And I've run some numbers. You could make a lot of money doing coaching, but I think you have to not just do one-to-one coaching, but if you do group coaching, like you could do groups of 6 people, 1 hour or 90 minutes, 3 or 4 times a day, and do 6-week sessions, and have like 1 6-week session would be renewable into like an intermediate course that would lead into an advanced course
Mm-hmm.
on anything from handling stress at work to building a career to whatever you want to. I mean, it could be anything. How to handle stress maybe. But Tony Robbins he's got these things like once a year. He'll send out something to literally everybody. I know I got it. And it basically says, join me for 4 free sessions, and it'll be for free, introductory course. And of course, he wants to actually train you to be a trainer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some statistics about this. So 80 million, he has 80 million people he sends this thing out to worldwide, right? 80 million people.
Yeah, I'm on his list too. So yeah.
And they say that his course, when it comes down, it's about $2,000. It's a whole course, right? And they say that he could get up to 5%. So 5% of 80 million is 4 million people. 4 million times 2,000 is $800 million. Now, I don't think he's going to make $800 million every year on this course, but you can make a lot of money. I mean, if you're smart about it, because what other people do, and I think you and I talked about this before going on the show, was people ultimately write their own courses. They have online courses, they publish courses, they do conferences, they do Zoom calls with 500 people. The numbers get really big when you start getting involved in multimedia. You know what I mean? Like leveraging your ability to coach people. So I think if you got the skills to connect, then all of it is, it's coming up with a process and leverage, and you can make millions out of this thing.
Absolutely.
Coaching is huge right now.
Oh yeah. With the pandemic, it's really brought it into the spotlight, and people are just needing someone to talk to and, unload. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So why do you do this, Gilda? Why do you want to why are you a coach? And then maybe specifically, why nonprofits? I'd be very interested to hear, particularly like, what it is about coaching that you really like.
So I love helping people in general. And I actually discovered that this coaching stuff is what I consider to be like a superpower. And I love it. And it's something where I can practice deep listening skills, something that kind of always done with clients my whole life. It allows me to use my intuitive sense to figure out like what's really going on, not necessarily what they're saying, but what I'm sensing there's another deeper issue. And then, coaching is something that I had no idea that this was possible, but I've been a huge, and I know you have been too, Rob, huge fan and just an avid reader of self-help, personal growth, all kinds of books, podcasts, all kinds of stuff. And now there's like a use for it. It's not just for me.
Yeah.
I can draw on not only my own experience or experience from other clients that I find that will help my other clients, but I can draw on different pieces of wisdom that I've collected over the years that I can drop here and there whenever the client needs it, which now there's a space for it, which is also very exciting. Also, it helps to up level every area of both not only my client's life, but you're along the ride, and you're in your own process of self-development as well. So you grow as a person, as the coach as well, which is also exciting. And I think most importantly, on the coaching side, I get to help clients create the core skills, the attitude shifts, some of the mindset, the ways of being and thinking that are actually going to serve them for life. So that's the most exciting part. As far as nonprofits go, it's interesting because you and I met when, I was in the insurance industry before I made the shift to life coaching. And at some point in my career, I love still the client interaction, but I was missing something and I didn't know what it was. And so I picked up a nonprofit client a few years in, and I just loved their mission and what they were doing, that I was like, I want to work with as many of these guys as possible. So I started to pick up some insurance clients on the nonprofit side. Just that sort of became my focus, but that still wasn't enough. And something was missing. And then as just, sort of a third party to these nonprofit organizations, I noticed they're experiencing a lot of burnout and a lot of, more so than in other industries. It's like their mission was so important that they dropped everything, even their own self-care, which I thought was kind of alarming. And so that combined with sort of a personal event of mine of where I was working myself into the ground to the point where when my daughter was 3, my oldest was 3.5, it was so bad that I thought a cold or flu is going to go away. And I just pushed through. But right at the 7-day mark, I went to go see the doctor because it just wasn't getting any better. And he said, you need to stop, you need to rest, and you actually have pneumonia. And so luckily I didn't have to be hospitalized, but he's like, your daughter, you can't even take care of you need to take care of yourself. So I had to send my 3-year-old to be taken care of by my mom and my mother-in-law, who had to kind of take turns. And it's because of that, like combine that personal experience with my passion for the nonprofits. And then when I discovered coaching, it was like, okay, this is an area that I want to help them with. So that's why I have such a focus on work-life, integration or balance, whatever you call it. So that's kind of how that came about. And it just second best is to serve those that are, doing so much awesome work in the world.
Did you have a shortness of breath too when you had pneumonia like that?
Yeah. It's just like a cough that wasn't getting any better. And I just was surprised because I was like, I'll just push through it like I always have done. But that was the incident like that was sort of my life-changing aha to say, you need to stop. And ever since then, I now listen to my body. And and I've had a lot of leaders, nonprofit leaders who it's been too late, where they've gotten some odd disease that now they're living with because they just kept going. And I want to, if I can prevent it, that's honestly, Rob, my ultimate, like bigger picture goal is to maybe prevent or alleviate burnout in the nonprofit social sector.
Yeah, because I asked about the shortness of breath because I swim every other day in the pool. And I just haven't been able to really catch my breath over the last month or so. It seems like I swim 5 or 6 laps and I'm like after a lap, I'm just out of breath. I have a shortness of breath and it's really weird. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe I'm working too hard too,
Could be, for sure.
Doing these YouTubes, this is hard work. So what are some of the, I mean, you touched on a couple, but I'd be interested to hear, I'm sure our viewers would too. what are some of the critical success factors that a person should have to be successful
Okay, so I kind of put
as a
these,
life coach?
yeah, I kind of put these in two sort of separate categories. One more of like what you're looking for in terms of what are those typical success factors. There's that part. And then there's another part, which is being a good coach, like what that looks like.
Mhm.
So as far as being a good coach goes, really being a good listener, they sound very basic, but it's a lot harder to do when you're actually coaching. So being a good listener, having the compassion and care, and
Yep.
not only that, but really kind of standing for your client in their own power. And I don't just mean like today. I mean, you see their potential and what they could achieve. So you're kind of actually standing for them in their next version of themselves. So if you see the behavior or the thinking that is where they're at and not where it needs to be, it's almost my job as a coach to get them from here to here so that they can start operating at that level. So the belief in your client is essential. Connecting with and liking people, at least on a one-on-one level, because I actually had a peer that we were talking the other day, and she's like, I'm sort of an introvert, so I don't like to talk to a lot of people, but she's fine one-on-one. So you don't actually have to like be people person, but it can help. And then just setting aside judgments, opinions, and this is a tough one, advice. Because sometimes we just all want to help someone so much that just giving advice is very natural.
Yes. Okay.
But I would say advice does have its place, and in the pure coaching training, it's really not supposed to have any place at all. But I find that if there's some kind of insight that's going to help the client at that moment get somewhere, have a little bit of progress, if you ask permission and say, hey, there's something that I just thought of that might be useful to you at this moment, would you like to hear it? And they say yes, then you can offer a little bit of advice, which I find to be kind of enhances the whole coaching experience. But in general, it's supposed to be, mostly the client coming up with answering questions and you kind of facilitating that whole process. And then on the second side of the critical success factors, this more the typical stuff, having likability, the know, like, and trust factor, I think is a good quality to have. Being confident in your ability to help the client. Really having a solid understanding of what their issues are and how you can help them, and really clearly communicating that in a way that is of service. Because sometimes people get in like desperate mode, and if it doesn't come across sincerely or out of service, then that's not a good way to go. And then I think one other thing would be just focusing on being more of a go-giver, so to speak. It's a book I read, I highly recommend, where it's just talking about how you can add value to this particular person and their situation. So for example, one of the things that I do with a cohort of mine is on Clubhouse, we have, which is an app, kind of like an audio only app. There's small spaces where you can have a little bit of community, have some open conversations with people, live. And we have a room every Thursday that we do called EDED, which stands for Executive Director Emotional Download. That's just a space. It's only an hour. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern every Thursday, and it's free. And we basically created a space because sometimes a lot of those EDs, executive directors and leaders, are very lonely at the top. They don't have a lot of folks to talk to and just air out the frustration. So it's a space that they can de-stress, talk about a rough day, talk about something that's really bothering them, and get some free coaching from us and support. And then there's other peers in the room in the nonprofit space that can also, offer gems and words of wisdom and things that have helped them in a similar experience, which is really great. But then again, we had just had a gentleman who's a corporate attorney in the UK who kind of comes in our nonprofit circles. He's not in the nonprofit space, but he actually joined and he had an issue that we talked him through. So anyone is actually welcome for anything, but it's mostly geared for the nonprofit professionals. So stuff like that. That's
interesting. Clubhouse as an app. So it's a space that you create for a certain group of people, I guess, a certain community. And is it like a chat room, but only it's audio?
Yeah, exactly. That's probably a good description of it. Or there's so there are kind of like two main kinds of rooms in there, and there are all kinds of topics on there, from real estate, crypto, coaching, career stuff, like everything on there. So it
Oh,
can be very addictive. So it's by invite only, and but so Rob, let me know. I can always invite you on there. But it's so in the what they call the bigger rooms, they have like people like Pat Flynn on there, and like I don't know, I can't think of too many people, Grant Cardone, all these people that are kind of like internet famous, and they're sort of on stage, and they give like sort of a talk, or just talk about a certain subject, riff on something, and then people in the audience can raise their hand, ask questions, that kind of thing.
really?
So, yeah, so that's like a
Great.
bigger
So
room.
virtual. Yeah.
All virtual. And then what's cool is you don't have to dress up or wear makeup or like you could be walking your dog, you go to the gym and exercise or whatever, and it's like a common thing where you can do whatever you want, and it's just normal on Clubhouse. But it's very addictive because people go from room to room. But there's those bigger kind of rooms, and then there's smaller kind of intimate rooms like the one my cohort and I run, where it's maybe like 10, 12 people in the room, and two people on the stage that are just kind of making a very simple conversation. Like yesterday, our room, we talked about how to get out of a funk, and other times we talk about being overwhelmed and what's helpful in that regard. And then other times it's focused on one person that's having something like a conflict with someone and they want to talk through that. So it's like a combination of different things, but really cool space.
It's very interesting. So in your coaching, what kind of issues do people have now? I mean, you talked about stress in the workplace,
yeah.
but I mean, it seems like, I mean, in my recruiting business, I talk to candidates who want to change jobs, and some of them don't, but it just seems like there's a lot of issues now. I mean, what kind of issues are you seeing with people on a consistent basis?
Specifically,
particularly in the workplace,
Oh, yeah. Specifically overwhelm and burnout and not having enough time. Like that's a big one. And then interestingly enough, a lot of the stress comes from interpersonal conflicts. We're talking about like someone having no issue with their colleague and how they're like approaching helping the same client. I've had people talk about, I just had a client that was frustrated with a few of her board members. She was ready to fire 2 of her board members. And we talked through it. And, basically we got to a point where it made better sense for her to have the conversations with them first about, what the expectations were versus what was actually happening, those kinds of things, self-image as a new leader, leadership transitions, personal relationships as well. So it's the full gamut of things, but those are sort of the more common coaching issues that I coach people around.
People seem like they're just not happy these days.
Yeah, definitely.
I had an issue with a really good client of mine. Called me up and she says, I need you to come over here and coach and maybe do some refereeing. I said, really? What happened? She goes, oh my gosh. She goes, my sales department they're at each other's throats, Rob. I said, what do you mean? She says, they're not, like half the people aren't talking to the other half. I go, what happened? She goes, well, everything was going great until we started talking politics.
Oh boy.
And then it's like half the people were on one side and half the people on the other side. And she said, we were out at a restaurant for a team building thing in a room. And it was about 25 of us, and people started drinking, and then they started yelling, and they said, this is supposed to be a team building exercise. And people were literally like screaming at each other face to face. And the manager had to come in and tell us to be quiet. There were patrons in the restaurant that were complaining that it was too loud and noisy. And this lady was telling me, she goes, it was a total disaster. Everybody had been working fine remotely, but when we got them all together face to face, they started talking about personal stuff, including politics. And they decided that they didn't really like this guy after all.
Oh, goodness.
Because I have a huge mess on my hands now.
Yeah.
There's people that won't even talk to the other person. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm supposed to go in there in 2 weeks. I have a meeting with HR and
Oh, boy.
and this board to come up with a strategy on how to get things back on track. But
Yeah.
he said
What?
it was amazing how just unhappy people really
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. And I just to add to that, Rob, I had talked to some, I forget which side of the family was, but different relatives, but they have this rule where during holiday meals, politics is just not a subject that they talk about specifically because of that. They just have it off the table. Nobody talks about it. Anything else
within
is,
their own family.
yeah, one of my relatives, they do that with their family and that works beautifully. So that might be something to take back and
Well, good.
establish. Yeah.
Well, so we have something else. So, I mean, if somebody wanted to get involved in life coaching, let's say there's somebody out there watching this now, it's thinking, it seems like you can make some money if you can leverage yourself, if you can scale a business, hire other people maybe, or do group coaching. It sounds like I've got the attributes and the skills,
Mhm.
and there's certainly a huge demand for it. It's getting bigger and bigger. How would somebody go about like becoming a life coach?
So, I mean, it's interesting because there are two career pathways to being a life coach. One is to go work for a company that offers coaching. And so you're just
Okay.
an employee, but you're doing coaching. On the one hand, it's appealing because you don't have to worry about any of the marketing or anything. You just
Yeah.
show up, work, and coach. And the second way, which is the path I've chosen, the harder one, is you got to go and get your own coaching clients. You got to figure out the marketing. And that's an interesting way to go. And there's a bunch of different ways to kind of build that. Part of it is starting to network with the people that you already know, telling them what you're doing. Also doing different workshops, like some of the ones I do are on making work-life balance work for you, for nonprofit organizations and churches and other groups, or burnout training. So kind of doing whatever you're coaching on, you can kind of do the presentation or workshop on that. And then after that, offer to help them go deeper and implement some of the things that you taught. So that's a really good way to do it as well. And there's so many different ways. There's the typical reaching out, the direct sales route. There's the online marketing as well. There's a bunch of things, but I think the most important part really about getting new clients is really making the authentic connection with whoever that client is. And if they get the sense that you can really help them, a lot of times for new coaches, I'll tell them to offer a sample session just to give somebody a feel for, like, they don't know about life coaching. You can describe it till you're blue in the face, but until they experience it and get oh, wow, that was very powerful, they want more of that. That's another good way to try to get people in the door. Yeah.
How do people, so if you want to, that's like the business development side of it, like how do you build your business? But I guess my question was, so how do you become a life coach? Like, is there a certification process? Do you have to go through training? Do you just read books? I mean,
excellent question.
I would imagine that at some point somebody's going to ask you, well, tell me about your qualifications, or why should I hire you? Or, I mean,
right.
Just kind of walk me through how somebody would get from the sofa to being a life coach.
Okay. Yeah. So certification is definitely something that I would recommend. Now, with life coaching, not executive coaching per se, but life coaching, it is the wild, wild west. Rob, because people can call themselves a life coach right now with no certification, no training, nothing. They can just call themselves a life coach. And some people do that, which I do not recommend. And I think that's what, if you hear any weird stories, it's because of the folks that have done that without the training that are, causing the bad rap, so to speak. But I mean, there's tons. When I did my research on coaching schools, there's so many out there. But I would say if someone's going to do the executive coaching career path, go to a school or certification program that's ICF accredited, the International Coaching Federation that I mentioned earlier, the gold standard.
Yeah.
Make sure they're going that route, because that's when people are going to ask about your credentials. On the life coaching side, it's funny, people don't really ask about your credentials as much. Now, I have a certification from an ICF accredited school, so it's fine. But the thing is, with the life coaching, especially if you're doing like online marketing and people are finding that way, what I find is they don't really care what your credentials are. All they care about is, do you care about me? And are you going to get me results? And as long as you can get me results, I don't really care about the other stuff. So, I mean, the certification is a great way to definitely get started. And then, but more than anything, I'd say go try it. Try to experience being coached and try coaching. What I ended up doing is during COVID, I took a crash course in coaching, and it was like a speed dating of coaching. They gave you a tool and then they threw you into these Zoom rooms and you just had like 10 minutes to try it out. And I fell in love with it. I was like, this is it. This is my jam. I found it. I'm so happy. Yeah. But it took me years to try to from the head and from reading tons of books of well, what could I do? What could I do? Finally found the coaching. So if you have any inkling or even just a curiosity about it, I encourage you, whether it's coaching or another career, go try it. Go volunteer somewhere doing something similar to, what it is that you want to do, or interview people in the field for sure, but go try it is the best way to test and really know if it's for you.
And then I guess to really learn the art of life coaching and how to do it, you have to take a course, obviously.
I would say that's the best way, because even if you read a book about it, it gives you some concepts. But the thing that's valuable about the certification and the training is they have mentor coaches that tell you what to improve, what you can tweak, and the feedback to get you better and better. So that's what's really valuable, not just the tools, because you could read a book on it and you could try it. But I think without that feedback, you might not be as good of a coach as you could be.
And I'm also thinking that if you do a good job with somebody, they're going to recommend you. And then your business could build very quickly just based on reputation, I would think, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly if you're doing group coaching.
Yeah. I mean, and even individual coaching, because I've had that happen where, clients have gotten, I had one client who was having an issue with her 15-year-old son. They were just at odds. We only had a few sessions, but after the sessions, she's reporting such a wonderful, much improved relationship with her son. And she talked to a coworker of her who ended up reaching out to me. And, so they definitely can happen that way for sure.
And I guess the more successful you are, the more you can increase your fees too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, so that's the beauty of if you do go on the entrepreneur route, you can kind of use your coaching practice, how full you are, as your gauge. So if you're really full and you're like, I just can't take on more, you just raise your fees. That's a great indicator to raise your fees. And then, you just keep going that way. On the, corporate side, if you're coaching, then of course you don't have control over that, but definitely on the entrepreneur side, you can definitely raise your fees.
Yeah. So are there a lot of companies just hiring people as coaches or what? I mean, that sounds kind of weird.
Well, so I'm not on that executive coaching side, so I don't know if I could speak to that much, but I can tell you, for example, I did a workshop on work-life balance for a bank, and the bank wanted to have a client appreciation for their nonprofit clients. So they paid me as a speaker to do that event, which turned out really well. As a result of that speaking event, I have a nonprofit I'm working with from that event, who I did a similar workshop for them. And now they're talking about, hey, could you do more trainings like this for our staff? And I'd like to see if I can help them both at an organizational level, as well as individually implement some of the things that I'm teaching. So, we're still in talks, but it's, I can see where it's going here, which is great.
So where do you see life coaching going in the future? I mean, do you see it continually growing as it is,
Yes.
or what? I mean, what's the future of it, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's I mean, we've talked about how, presidents of the United States and Bill Gates and Oprah all having their own personal coaches,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in time it's going to be the norm that everybody has their
yeah,
own life coach, just like you have
yeah,
a fitness
yeah,
trainer or whatever you're going through. Everyone's going to have their own life coach. I mean, we're not quite there yet, but it's starting to become more
yeah,
mainstream that with
yeah,
COVID, it's like,
really is.
I
Yeah.
have this stress, and I just talking to my spouse is not enough, or my friends, because friends, yes, you can talk to them, but the coach is, like I said earlier, like holds you to your own power, your next best level of
Yeah,
yourself. So they're gonna tell you the truth,
yeah.
even as
And,
hard as your friends are not going to tell you the truth. Hate to say it,
and they
but
make you account.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah, you mentioned spouses, I don't know what's going on in our society, but in my recruiting business, I can't remember the last time I talked with a married woman.
what do you mean?
I mean, and I don't mean I don't mean to be judgmental or anything, but I'm
Yeah,
just saying that every woman that I've talked with, I think in the last 18 months
yeah.
is single, divorced, or just a single parent.
Oh, okay. You mean who you're recruiting as far as
Yeah.
women
So
you're talking to? Okay.
when I deal with candidates who are women, right? The,
Right.
this is like everyone's a single parent now. Like
Oh,
they got
yeah.
divorced, never got married. So I guess the reason why I bring that up is, I never really thought of it, but what you said really is provocative because if you really think about it, there's a lot of people out there who don't have anybody to really confide in. I mean, I've been married 39 years. I have a wife.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, I mean, we're partners. We talk
Yep.
about business. We talk about personal stuff. I mean, she's my confidant. She's my trustworthy partner. She keeps me in line. She protects me. I mean, I find it would be very difficult for someone who is a single parent or just a single person to really sort through all these issues. And there's so many issues now that you have to sort through. I mean, life is very, very complicated. And like you said, there's not enough time. There's people and things and everything else coming at you from all different directions. I could definitely see how somebody could need a life coach because for a lot of these people, there's nobody out there. It's like them and the internet, them and looking into a computer, them and listening to the radio, or some soul
Yeah.
killing,
Right.
internet based activity, gaming or something. And
Right.
again, I'm not being judgmental or being negative about these things. All I'm saying is, I could definitely see
Mhm.
how there's a large segment of the population that's just lonely out there, that just needs help.
Oh,
They're
absolutely.
probably just searching for somebody. Who do I talk with? Where do I find? I need to talk to somebody, and
Yep.
that's a life coach.
Absolutely.
That's a life
Absolutely.
coach.
Yeah, and you kind of brought up an interesting subject earlier. You had mentioned about, well, why aren't people happy, right? Like people aren't happy, you mentioned. So I know in terms of, what's going on there, I find that one big thing is lack of purpose. That's a big one.
Mhm.
I know that was something or meaning of life. That was something I dealt with for a while before I found coaching. So that's one thing. Another that I've seen too is the tendency to focus on what's wrong and really operating from there, which is scary because it's like you just look at the news and COVID
Yeah,
and what's going on in the world, and it's so depressing. So I actually deliberately take news fast. I just try to generally not even look at that mostly, unless once in a while just to find out what's going on.
yeah,
But that's one thing that I think drives the need for coaching and is making people unhappy. Another is, being more reactive versus proactive with their
yeah,
time, with their energy,
yeah,
with everything
yeah,
in their life. And a big one I find too is a lot of the negative self-talk, big time.
yeah,
And a lot of people don't even know it's happening. It's like, that's just how they operate. And the sad part is not only that it's happening, but they're believing the negative self-talk. It's going on, and that's the thought that people are choosing, and that they don't realize that they have a choice, because sometimes with our past, however we're all brought up, there's a lot of negative programming that we were told, you can't do this, or you're not good enough, or all the stuff. And, a lot of this happened in my own awareness journey of, wait a second, for X amount of years, I've been told that, but I don't have to believe that. And here's the new thoughts. And, it's going to take practice to get there, but that's another one. And then a big one with the burnout or the overwhelm is not allowing people to fill their own cups first before trying to serve others. That's a big one. And then pushing down feelings and then ignoring them, because like you said, that like the gaming behavior or the going down the internet rabbit hole, like people are doing it because they're afraid to confront their uncomfortable feelings. So they're just looking for an escape. And that's causing even more problems. So coaches help you deal with the hard things, and they do it with you, so you're not alone, and they keep you accountable and get you there. So absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's another key point too. The advantage of being a coach is versus a friend or even a spouse is you can keep people accountable. You make people accountable. So.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. Taking full responsibility. That's a really, really big one, because if there's a tendency to blame, or, oh, I didn't get this job or this promotion because of this, and this. The cool, exciting news is that when you take full responsibility for everything in your life, including all the outward things, you'll find that you end up empowering yourself, and it's freeing, because you don't have to rely on all that or anybody else. You have the power to actually change that, which is very exciting.
Yeah, it's like what we do is, as coaches, is we trying to put this into one sentence, I would say we facilitate a journey of self-discovery to achieve self-realization and self-examination, to reach a place where we're comfortable from within us.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyways, let's end on that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Gilda. And thank you for joining us today. Where can people reach you, Gilda?
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. I wanted to also mention, Rob, I have 2 gifts for any of your viewers. One is a free guide on how to focus on your priorities. It's more of a workbook type of thing, kind of aligns your values with that. It gives some tips in there. And the other is just a simple 2-pager of a daily happiness formula. And so you guys can find that at www.nonprofitpath, PATH, like you're walking a path.com. And I can send you a link to put it in the notes.
Great. Thank you very much. And
thank you so much, Rob.
It's great talking to you. This coaching thing, I've been hearing about it from my clients and candidates more and more. Life coaching, executive career coaching. So I've learned a lot today. I've taken a lot of notes. I'll probably do a follow-up blog on it. Thank you very much. And for our viewers, we encourage you to subscribe below so that you don't miss any of our future episodes, which will be released every other Tuesday at 7 a.m. East Coast time. Thanks so much for watching, and look forward to seeing you again for the next episode of The $1 Million Career, where we will continue to help you plan, build, and supercharge your own $1 Million Career.